Uh, Greetings, live videoers. It's me, Wayman29. I was scanning through the tagline religion, and it came on the video by Flyboy30, an honest appeal to Christians. And he has an appeal to Christians who really think about the religion and what it is doing to them. Um, he has a scenario about a belief system long ago in a volcano that needs to be appeased, and he talks about Richard Dawkins at some point. I really appreciate Richard Dawkins. I'm a Christian, but the guy's brilliant, and I respect scholarship and brilliancy in their mediums. But one thing that Richard Dawkins forgot to cover was the idea of the metaphor and the mythos and the evolving use of mythology as it pertains to peoples of the whole world. You touched on it there. That ritual that you mentioned would have evolved. It would not have been the same for 3,000 years because as new theology and new ideas are added, it definitely changes, and it has to change in order to stay alive and be effective. So eventually, the sacrifices would have stopped, and if I was there, I would try to institute, like the Romans did, and many religions did. I would try to institute and integrate my own religious theology in with the other belief system so that they would be able to understand it and start eventually making that part of their own. Which is why when you go to the Temple of Esna, in the Egyptian Temple of Esna, which was built during the Roman period, you see a huge zodiac on the ceiling, which is the influence of that culture being put on the Egyptian belief system. So, old gods, as you say, they never die. They're just transformed into new gods who take on the old attributes. Kind of like Zeus, even back before that, Yahweh ends up taking on the attributes of El from the Babylon, Canaanite pantheon. So a lot of transitions are being made, and the thing is, if things stay the same, it dies. So it's continually moving, and it's continually in a state of flux. So they might not know the scientific ideas and how the volcano works. However, they know more about it than the science, and then I would be standing there explaining it to them. They know more about it in metaphoric value and metaphoric terms. Now, if the volcano exploded and all of a sudden killed the enemies on the other side of the mountain that were torturing them and kept on coming over and attacking their village, kind of like the scenario of the Exodus where all the Egyptians are wiped out by the elements. A lot of times the gods were attributed to the elements, which could be a positive or a negative thing. Kind of like Shamash in the ancient Near Eastern texts. He was a sun god. However, if you're caught in the desert without water, it could prove fatal. So that would be appeared as the god's wrath. So a lot of people still think like that today. You get fundamentalist Christians who, during Katrina, that's got to be a punishment from the gods on the city of New Orleans for blah blah blah. Or, the 9/11 events here in the United States. That's got to be, a punishment for homosexuality. So, it just depends on where you're from, and you're thinking on those issues, and it's still very prevalent today, unfortunately. The idea of prayer. There's a great German scholar, Meister Eckhart. He was awesome, and he was talking about the idea of prayer, and he said that if the God wills somebody to be sick, they're going to be sick, so maybe you shouldn't even pray for them to get better because that would be against the will of God, which is really interesting. And I did another video. Dawkins, or people like to use, I think it came from Dawkins, if the amputee can grow a, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, we can do that. We will be able to do that someday in a petri dish, and that will someday be viewed by Christians as a miracle or healings. And just like when a doctor, through science, heals somebody today, it's all attributed to healings. So it's just a matter of viewing the metaphor and understanding how myth, people like Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung have done studies on the super subconscious. Why are there in almost every single culture stories of floods and things like that? It doesn't mean that there was a global flood. However, the flood motif seems to be in almost every religion or background. So, it just proves interesting, and it ends up bringing about some really interesting questions. You get people who studied these types of topics in anthropology, like George Fraser and the Golden Bough. There you have examples of primitive cultures, believing they're eating the god, just like we do in Christianity. And you have people who believe in sympathetic magic and different sorts of things, like different charms would have magic provide healing or protection. We do the same thing. I know some Protestant ministers who would pray over a hanky, take it to a hospital, they put it on their pillow, and expect, some kind of healing to take place. Not that I personally believe all that. However, I believe that to the person's psychologically, and it can bring about some kind of what we would call placebo effect. And who cares? You lose $100 and you pray about it. You go out and you flip over a piece of sod after you're plowing in the field, and there it is. The prayer is kind of like the speech to the pregame. It empowers you to go do something about it, and you feel that you're being empowered by the being to go do something. So it's an empowerment. And the positive aspects of all this metaphor and mythology and religion played a positive role in two examples. Well, I can think of three. The first example was it preserved the Jewish race, if you read the Old Testament biblical text, from being assimilated into Babylonian culture and Assyrian and Syrian cultures, like the Sea Peoples were. Never even heard of them. They have no idea where the Sea Peoples went. They were totally integrated into those cultures. But because of the religion, Judaism was preserved. Same thing for Native American during the Manifest Destiny and the Indian removal policy in the United States. Their religion preserved their cultures and their ideas and their people. And even during the laws against the Native American religions, it was still practiced secretly. It went underground, and you still have those rituals today, even though they're updated and changed as society moved forward. Also, a third example would be the Civil Rights Movement, where Martin Luther King used the metaphors, mythology, motifs to unite the people in a common cause, and use the power of the myth to empower the people to do what needed to be done. Now, whether it's all true or not, who cares? The job got done. They're better off than they were, 100 years ago. So that's one way religion contributes, and that's one way the myth and the motifs work. And if you view the metaphor in that way, and metaphoric value, and if people quit trying to prove how it's real all the time, it might actually be more useful than thought. And the idea of a myth is, the definition is, myths are facts that never happen, but they happen over and over again in the lives of people as they recount them. So you're grabbed by the myth, and you find yourself living it, and you're saying, wow, Odysseus did this, and I'm right here in this situation. Oh man, what do I do? Oh, wait a minute. Gilgamesh worked through this. He had the same questions as I did about death and about the afterlife. What do I need to do? What journey am I on? Who do I need to ask, and what do I need to be thinking about? So, there you go. Gilgamesh, 3,500 years ago. Sorry, 3,500 BC. Had the same questions. So, it's all in the big soup. So, I'm not really sure if I can explain it any more than that. So, I don't even understand what your question would be about after reflecting on all of that, because the metaphor and the changing motifs and dreams and all that is expressed in many different ways, and it all comes to the surface, and people need to talk about it in the abstract, and that's what religion and mythology allows us to do.